there's none I desire beside you. And you have made me glad, and I'll say of the Lord, you are my shield, my strength, my portion, deliverer, my shelter, strong tower, my very present help in time of need. You have made me glad, and I'll say of the Lord, you are my shield, my strength, my portion, deliverer, my shelter, strong tower, my very present help. You are my shield, my strength, my portion, deliverer, my shelter, strong tower, my very present help in time of need.
So Sam asked me to share a little bit of what my life's been like over the last 12 months or so. So I sat down and had a little think about it, and I guess when I have thought about it, I recognise that everyone's different, and everyone has found different things difficult about COVID. And for me, I guess my personality is one that doesn't particularly mind times of being on my own. Particularly, I quite enjoy space and time on my own. So whereas some people have found that very difficult, that's not been a particular issue for me. I'm also by nature a natural planner, and of course nobody's been able to plan anything. So for me, that has felt a little bit awkward and difficult. And I guess the other thing that's about me is that I'm naturally inquisitive and curious, and I want to know information and facts. And at the beginning of the virus, I soaked up lots of news, information, facts, and probably some false facts as well, like we all did, but quickly became aware that actually to try to take on everything about COVID was just not healthy. So I've had to rein back my natural inquisitiveness to a degree to protect myself from continually thinking about COVID, and I think that's a healthy thing to do. I had a bit of a coincidence with my life, because I've been trying to work 4 days a week for quite some time, and with my current employer, they wouldn't allow it to start with, but actually over time I've convinced them that they really don't need me 5 days a week. So and actually my change to 4 days a week started right at the start of COVID, just totally coincidentally. But for me, that's been really quite good, because my work has stepped up quite considerably, and actually what I've been able to do is to try to essentially fit my work into those 4 days, and actually I found that quite tiring, but I've had that 5th day off to be able to rest, to recuperate, because I have found it very tiring, because quite often I'm staring at the computer sort of over 8 hours a day, and I'm in meetings for a large portion of that as well. And I find that has been quite exhausting at times and difficult to get used to. I think I haven't, unlike Yancy, I haven't started crocheting. Obviously I'm considering it, but I haven't got into it yet. In fact, I haven't really found time for any new hobbies at all. So, but actually what I have done is I have tried to spend time where I can in nature. I like being outside. I like cycling. I like playing tennis. And actually for a proportion of the time, that's been stuff I've been able to do, and I've really enjoyed that. So, and I personally find being outside and being in the countryside brings me much closer to God as well, because I think it's just the way we're made, certainly the way I'm made. When I'm out in nature, I feel much closer to God and able to respond to Him better. I think by nature, I'm a natural optimist. I always think the best of people and best of situations. That's my natural style. And one of the things I found really useful during this whole period is to always try to think of things that I can be thankful for. And I think that for me has been something which I found very helpful, both in terms of home life and in terms of work life and family life. If you can always focus on what you can be thankful for, actually it puts the rest of the issues into some perspective. And I found that to be really good, to actually tell God what you're grateful for. The other life lesson I guess I would say that I've learned through COVID, and I guess it's something which has come to me over time, is there's something that I was taught many years ago. Actually, it was when I was still working at Boots. There was a course I went on where they were really keen on saying grip self, then grip task. The idea being that you can't really grip a complex task if you haven't first of all centered yourself and gripped yourself first. And I think as Christians, I'd add on to that, grip God, grip self, then grip task. And that's what I've tried to do throughout this COVID, because actually there are lots of things which are quite complex and difficult throughout this whole time. And actually, if we just try to deal with those things without gripping yourself, but actually gripping God first, I think we can run into difficulties. So that's been something which I've found really important to do. And that's me.
I can see the promised land, though there's pain within the plan. There is victory in the end. Your love is my battle cry. When my fears like Jericho build their walls around my soul, when my heart is overthrown, your love is my battle cry, the anthem for all my life. Every giant will fall, the mountains will move, every chain of the past you've broken into, over fear, over lies. We're singing the truth that nothing is impossible with you. There is hope within the fight, in the wars that rage inside. Though the shadows steal the light, your love is my battle cry, the anthem for all my life. Every giant will fall, stronger name than Jesus. You overcame, broke every chain, forever reign, King Jesus. Every giant will fall, the mountains will move, every chain of the past you've broken into, over fear, over lies. We're singing the truth that nothing is impossible. Every giant will fall, the mountains will move, every chain of the past you've broken into, over fear, over lies. We're singing the truth that nothing is impossible with you.
This is the blessing that Moses, the man of God, pronounced to the Israelites before his death. Said a lot of words, but we're taking it from verse 24. But Asher, he said, most blessed of sons is Asher. Let him be favoured by his brothers, and let him bathe his feet in oil. The bolts of your gates will be iron and bronze, and your strength will equal your days. There is no one like the God of Jeshurun, who rides across the heavens to help you, and on the clouds in his majesty. The eternal God is your refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms. He will drive out your enemies before you, saying, destroy them. So Israel will live in safety. Jacob will dwell secure in a land of grain and new wine, where heavens drop dew. Blessed are you, Israel, who is like you, a people saved by the Lord.
Thank you, Sylvia. So we're going to focus in a little bit on this passage this morning, and particularly on one part of it. And I'm going to speak for a bit, and then I've got an interview that I recorded earlier on this week that I want to share with you as well this morning. Recently, I read an article by a journalist called Gillian Tett, writing for the Financial Times, which was called "COVID, We're in the Same Storm, but Not in the Same Boat." And it was reflecting on the fact that COVID-19 has interrupted everyone's lives. However, our experiences of it will have been massively different based on all kinds of factors, from where you live to our stage of life, if we have children at home, whether we're in full-time employment, part-time employment, retired, our personalities, where we live in the world, whether we have underlying health issues. And I think it's important for us even to recognise as a church, even though we live in a similar community, that even for us within Ruddington Baptist Church, our experiences of this time will have been vastly different, and someone else's experience won't have been the same as yours. This journalist, Gillian Tett, says that in her mind, generally people have fallen into one of four categories: the desperately bored, those facing burnout, those facing more serious breakdown, or those who have found COVID and lockdown a peculiar period of blessing. I found this quite interesting. I don't know about you, but I would say that my experience has perhaps shifted between a couple of these descriptions over the past year. I would probably say that in the first lockdown, I felt to some extent in the fourth category. Whilst I was concerned about the impact of COVID on everyone, and I remember my mum getting COVID and being really worried for her, despite all that, I still felt that to me, it felt like a peculiar period of blessing in some ways, with more time to spend at home with my family, a slightly slower pattern of life, and time to get out in the garden in the sun and walks in the park. Thankfully, that first lockdown, the weather was very good. But actually, this third lockdown that we're in now hasn't felt that way at all. Add in an extra child, not being able to have the support of family and friends as much, and the bad weather meaning that there's very little to do with young children. I'd then possibly put myself more in category 2, perhaps not facing burnout, but moving more in that direction. I do recognise that we're really fortunate to have a house with a garden and a nice local parks to walk in. But even still, this third lockdown I found a struggle. I'm sure as I've just gone through these 4 categories, you may well have identified yourself in one, if not more of them. And I doubt there are many people who can honestly say that they've lived the whole of the last year in category 4, a period of peculiar blessing. I'm sure there are not many people who have been free from challenges and struggles because of COVID, or at some point felt fed up and low. I actually think that this is probably the hardest bit of the pandemic for many people that we're in now, and it's taken its toll, and the winter weather isn't helping. And so whilst we may find ourselves in different situations and experiences, I actually think that this passage has something to offer to all of us that Sylvia's read to us today. And I want to think for a bit this morning about what it means to be held by God. In this passage from Deuteronomy 33, Moses is speaking a blessing over the tribes of Israel, and particularly over this one tribe, the tribe of Asher. And he seems to be focusing in on the battle and the struggle that they're facing against their enemies. And I suspect this is actually talking about physical enemies with armies, but it could just as easily be talking about spiritual or emotional attack as well. And in the midst of this blessing, we have one verse that I'd like us to focus in on. It's verse 27, and it says, "The Lord your God is your refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms." In the middle of battle and struggle, this blessing isn't necessarily about having courage and strength to fight their enemies. Rather, it's more about submission and rest in a God who we can trust in. God is your refuge, and his arms are under you. Instead of striving and fighting and trying to figure it out and fix your own problems, find rest in God. As someone whose tendency is to try and fix things or overthink my struggles, I find this verse quite helpful, but I also find it a challenge. God has got you. Let him hold you. Let him fight for you. It reminds me of another verse from Exodus 14, verse 14, which says, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." But I think it's still an easy thing to say, stop fighting and striving and overthinking things and be held by God. I'm not sure that's quite so easy in practice. And so this week I had a really helpful conversation with Julie and Eve, and we talked around this question of what does it mean to be held by God in a bit more depth and in different times and seasons of life. And we recorded the interview for this service, and so I'm going to play it in a second for us all to watch together, and I hope it'll be useful to some, if not all of us. It was outside, so there is a little bit of wind at some point, so you might have to listen carefully, and you'll notice that me and Julian are both wrapped up very warm. So this Sunday we're looking at this passage from Deuteronomy chapter 33, which talks about God being our refuge, who holds us in his everlasting arms, particularly in the midst of battle and struggle, and God protecting us from harm. And earlier this week I went for a walk with you, Julian, and we were talking a little bit about this, and you were sharing some of your thoughts and experiences about being held by God. And I thought it would be helpful to let other people in on some of our conversation. And so we've met up here this morning at the Renew Green Spaces allotment, which I thought we'd meet here because it was a good place for people to see. This is our prayer space here. And I just have a few questions to ask you, if that's all right. And so what do you think we mean when we talk about being held by God?
Yeah, I mean, I've been a Christian for really for all of my adult life, and I guess I'd be thinking that core to my faith is a God who does hold, and therefore I would say that I have experienced a range of things over the years where I have a tangible feeling or knowledge that God has held me in a range of situations. I mean, that might be good or bad, but it is I think it's a faith thing. I believe that actually I've been helped.
I think in my experience of life, at different times in my life, different seasons, I've felt that kind of sense of God holding me in different ways, and so sometimes it might be a really clear sense of his presence. Sometimes it might be a really difficult time. I might be questioning a little bit, where is God? But at the same time still being able to acknowledge that he exists and he's there holding me. I was wondering if you've had any experiences in particular of God holding you, and what those have looked like.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because, well, it might be about personality, but sometimes I think we can think of the times that God has held us in bad times, when actually God is holding us all the time. We might just not be acknowledging it. I guess when we were talking, one of the things that came to mind was when I was finishing my first degree in London, and for whatever reason, just as I was about to graduate, I was called down to London for a viva, and it was just a random viva. But I found that a really, really difficult thing, because I think because I'd moved on at that point. I thought I'd done my degree, I was about to get married, I'd sort of put that bit of my life behind, and then I was being called back to kind of revisit it. And I found myself incredibly stressed, incredibly anxious, not with really any kind of valid reason, but that was how I felt. And worked myself up into such a place that I could barely think, and the viva date was getting nearer and nearer. Prayed one evening and had the most extreme experience probably of God that I've ever had, and that was a real hold. I felt held, I felt loved and nurtured. I experienced a kind of a warmth that I had never experienced before, and went into that viva knowing that actually I was being held by God, that whatever I experienced, it would be okay. And actually the viva was awful, but I was okay.
I think in my life, my natural reaction when I'm going through a difficult time is to fight against it, or if it's a mental struggle, to try and figure something out in my mind rather than just resting in God's presence. I think there's something in this passage about, in the midst of battle, God being their refuge and holding them. And I remember back to a time I had when we just moved house, and I was actually feeling quite unsettled and quite anxious, and I've been going over stuff a lot in my mind, and it wasn't until I started seeing my spiritual director, who I still meet with, who helped me to think a bit more about stopping and allowing myself just to be in God's presence. And it was only when I did a bit more of that I was able to feel that sense of being held by God. I was wondering if there's any places for you which are places of stopping, and how important it is to leave that space.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd learned that later in life, and certainly having 4 young children quite close together was a really hard time, kind of physically and mentally, and not a place where you can stop. And at that time I didn't want to stop either, but I guess there was a period of time, maybe kind of in my 30s and 40s, where I was kind of parenting hard and working hard, and to the latter part of that, looking after my father hard, and therefore had no space at all. And it was sort of okay until it was not. And there were a couple of things that I guess I journeyed with. One was bringing my father up to Ruddington, and as an only child, being the main and only carer of him. That was a good discipline to actually start thinking, well, I can't do other things as well as do that. But even then, I still don't think that I'd kind of got the art of stopping and slowing down. really that has only happened since I gave up working full-time a year ago, so just before lockdown. I genuinely felt called to leave work, just as I had felt that I was called to work for the NHS as a psychiatric nurse. I felt as equally crystal clear that it was right for me to go, and for what reason wasn't specifically clear. But actually, as the year has rolled on, I've realised that actually this has been the right time to slow down, to rest and restore and recover, and to find God in the things that I would not have had time to have even noticed before. So over the years I have lamented things that I haven't been able to do because of all the other things. And that might be spend more time with friends or pray about things. So I would say my learning in the past 12 months has been about finding God in really quite gentle, small, easy spaces that I wasn't able to access before. Is that?
Yeah.
Yes, that okay.
And so you've been spending a fair bit of time down here on the Green Spaces allotment.
I have.
And I remember speaking to you a few months ago, and you said that you didn't feel at the stage of life where you could become an allotment person yet, but yet you're down here on the allotment. Has this been a helpful space for you so far?
Yeah, it has. I mean, there is an irony here that actually many years ago, when I was trying to cram everything into my life, I did have an allotment on this patch. It was actually this allotment. And I had this fantasy that I would come down with my 4 young children and dig the soil, and we would all have a really harmonious experience. Broadly, our children were quite well behaved, but they were absolutely abominable on this patch. They would just hit each other with the spades, and it was all a bit disastrous. So it's funny to come back and have a bit of a gazebo and shed and greenhouse and well dug soil, and I love that. I've spent a bit of lockdown in my own garden doing some building and gardening. I'm kind of very average at it though. I know there's a bit of a reputation, I think, that I'm quite good at gardening, but it's not well founded. It's just sometimes I can grow things, sometimes I can't. And I'm a bit kind of ambivalent around kind of garden expertise. I just love being in the outside. I love growing things, even if it's not 100% successful. Why do I feel that? I think because it is where we're meant to be. We're meant to be outside and growing things and being in communion with each other. And so just to meet people on the allotment, to share and to check that other people are okay, to check that I'm okay, that means a lot.
And in many ways I think God is revealed in that, in the beauty of nature and the beauty of each other.
Yeah.
And the love and care we show for each other.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think you have to look for that. You know, I think it is there, but you have to have the sort of the mindset and the space to be able to process the amazing things that even on this sort of partially bleak January day, there's amazing stuff going on around us that you have to look for.
I think there's also something about being here with other people that you said that is almost about being the hands of God holding each other. And so it's not just that God miraculously holds us, but he calls us to be those hands holding each other as well.
Yeah, well I feel really strongly, almost passionately about that. And I really worry about our lockdowns and about how that is going to pan out for people over the coming years, where people have coped with isolation in different ways. I know that we're all different. I know that we all come from a different position of, some people like to be with a lot of people, some people are happy being on their own. But I truly believe that it is good for us to be with people. And so within the COVID rules and the restrictions, being able to be here with 6 other people feels like well, it's a fabulous thing for now. It's a great liberation.
Yeah. And so we've been going through this time where I think there wouldn't be many people who would say they haven't struggled in one way or another. We've just had this passage where Moses is praying this blessing over the people of Israel who perhaps are going through some struggles and some battles. If you were to pray a prayer or a blessing over people today, over all of us, what would you include in that?
At this current time, I would pray for a peace of mind. So I know that that can just trip off your tongue, can't it? And let's pray for the peace of people. But most people I speak to are perturbed about the way they are having to live or forced to live, or have huge anxieties about how they're getting through the day. Hugely, I think, caught up if they go for a walk with their friend, or they bump into someone else. And I don't think that's just kind of light anxiety. I know people who are really quite screwed up. So that would be my prayer, that people are saved from, healed from, or have peace from the anxiety that is currently sitting in their hearts.
Well, we can pray here together. I think it'd be good for all of us to pray together, and so we're going to now move into a time of prayer as a church, and we'll pray here, and I'm going to put some prayer pointers on the screen for everyone else to join in with prayer as well. So thank you very much, Julie.